Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Bread for Soul Convos with myself, Sir LSG. And today's topic is one that I've been wanting to find a way to do it, and I think it's an important one, if not more important than many other topics that we've had on the show. And in recent years, we've seen depression and other forms of mental illnesses appearing a lot on social media. And that, to me, has meant that as a society, we are slowly getting to open up. We are slowly opening up about our mental state. We are also realizing that this is a global problem, guys. But the speed at which we are moving to remove the stigma behind mental illness needs to increase. We need to get more faster in terms of removing the stigma, and so allowing people to be able to ask and seek for help. And we need to get to a point where we see being depressed the same way we see other illnesses, so that people can freely ask for help and without being judged for it. So on today's show, I've got two guests. I've got Bright Soul Rain, who's a DJ, a vinyl enthusiast, a music collector, and he's the founder of Deep House Movement out in Durban. He's also the founder of Faki Concept Store. He'll explain to us what Faki means. And I also have on the other on the other end of the line, Dr. TONYANE, who's a specialist psychiatrist with experience with working with youth and adults. She also holds an honors degree in aerospace medicine. I actually didn't know about this aerospace thing, but I'm going to ask her about that too. Her practice, her private practice, is currently at the Life Custom View Hospital. So I'm going to start by bringing in Bright Soul into the conversation. How's it, brother? Are you cool?
Good.
Thank you so much for joining in on this conversation, bro.
Cool, cool, cool.
Um, Tell me before we get into things, what does like Faki is spelled Fakhi, your store? What does that exactly mean?
The how it's pronounced, it's far key. It's a key that takes you far. So it's far FAR and key for opening. So it's far key. And then but it's taken from an abbreviation that means fight against killing honest intentions.
What does that mean? Like, if you can just briefly explain that.
No, it says I think certain individuals or people or we as a society have intentions somehow. Like you have the Bread for Soul Converse, your intention is to share information with the rest of the world. Also, that's where I say fight against killing honest intentions. So your intentions must always be honest. Don't fight against them.
Mm.
So that's what it stands for.
I hear you, bro. And I love that. I love the fact that you've got an online store, and we'll touch a bit on that towards the end of the conversation. But this conversation between me and you started earlier this year. We were at a gig, and were telling me your life story, because I asked you. You usually share you share about your depression a lot. So I wanted to, if you could share a point in your life where you were depressed, where you were heavily depressed and didn't want any contact with people, like you were looking forward to spending weekends alone, sleeping. What was that like for you? Can you explain that part of your life?
To be frank, it's been a while. I'll say a good 4 years between uh, say 2015 and 2019. Uh, but a part of me just felt that there's a bit of change happening to me, but I wasn't aware clearly what was happening with me because uh, I started drifting away from the nightlife. I started drifting away from people. So But a turning point where I figured I needed help is sometime in 2018, and it's when I started feeling suicidal as well, and that's when I decided to get help. But I will say, tracing from the events that I've experienced before, I'll say it's been a good 4 years. And then in 2019, February, I got hospitalized for post-traumatic stress and also depression as well.
And during that time, what other things were you noticing with regards to being depressed? How were you feeling? What was your mental state at that time?
I think the worst part about depression is it takes time for you to pick up your changes. But I'll say one thing that some of the things that I picked up is I wanted to stay as far away from everyone. So what would happen is I'll go to work, come back in the afternoon or at night, say bath, eat, and go straight to bed. I became antisocial somehow. On weekends, then it was a thing of if I don't really need to go out, I don't have an appointment, I don't have a gig, I will just shut off, stay in my room the whole day, only wake up to eat or maybe go to the bathroom and come back and sleep. So it became almost like my life for good 3 years because I moved away from everyone and everything. And also what I picked up was how irritable I would get in the relationships I had, the friendships I had. I'll say I'll get a bit agitated faster, or I will get to conversations. Mid conversation, I'll feel like, listen, I think I need to shut out or shut down and not speak anymore. So, but it has always been about sometimes I'll get overwhelmed by things, then I'll want to shut out and shut down from everything and everyone.
Yeah, man. I wanna get in.
Also, as you mentioned, it got to a point where I would. I'll say specifically, I don't even know how I made it through 2018 alone, because at some point I would be in spaces where I'll be driving home. You know, when you're driving, you play music, and then suddenly there will be a truck or a bigger car next to you, and you start feeling an urge of crashing your car to a truck or whatever bigger car next to you. So that's when I started feeling it's getting worse. And then that's when I started thinking maybe I should get help. But obviously, I should mention that a lot of events led up to me getting into that position that I was in.
Okay. I think we'll get into some of those events. I want to get in the doctor, Dr. Tonyane. Welcome, firstly, and thank you so much for doing this.
Not a problem. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah. I want to know from you, what are the different types of depression caused? Like, I think of, let me say, mental illnesses, but more leaning towards depression and anxiety. If you could explain those differences.
Okay. So, I mean, most of the mental illnesses, all right, we group them, all right? So primarily we look at what is like the main symptom in that like illness or disorder. So primarily when we look at the psychotic disorders, all right? So those are illnesses like your schizophrenia, schizophreniform, delusional disorder. Then we look at the mood disorders where the primary illness or primary symptom is a mood symptom. So whether it's a low mood, an irritable mood, or a manic mood, like excessively happy. Right, then that's where your depression is, and that's where your bipolar mood disorder is. And then we have like anxiety disorders, and the most common ones that people know that previously was considered an anxiety disorder, what we call PTSD, right, post-traumatic stress disorder. It has now been grouped separately now to a trauma and stressor-related disorder. And then we have anxiety disorders like social phobias, specific phobias where people are afraid like of snakes or fear of flying, right? So that's grouped in one. And then we have other illnesses, what we call neurodevelopmental disorders. So you're born with them, but as you grow up and you develop into childhood, into being adult, the symptoms come up. So illnesses like autism and ADHD, so they're also one group. Then you have what we call the cognitive disorders, where there's primary illness there. It's related around, or the symptom is related around forgetting things and memory problems. So that's on the one side, what we call dementia. And then personality disorders also grouped into one. So those are the main clusters. But specifically for depression, we have different types of depression. And the one that most people identify with is what we call major depressive disorder, right? But that is almost sort of at the end of the spectrum of what depressive disorders is. Maybe let's start with the milder ones, right? Your mild depressive disorder is what we call an adjustment disorder. So adjustment disorder means that you go on about life and there's an event, like a traumatic, and usually it's a traumatic event, or an unexpected life-changing event. You suddenly, like, let's say, lose your job, you get retrenched, or there's a natural disaster, or there is like what America experienced, where there was maybe 9/11 and terrorism. So big event happens, which then changes your life, and it takes time for you to adjust back to normal. So as that event happened, then you get some of the depressive disorder, but you almost access your internal resources to get back to normal. So that's why it's called an adjustment. You're adjusting to something that has happened. All right. Then you have major depressive disorder, which now takes much longer. So you stay with the depressive symptoms, but now these depressive symptoms, they're starting to change your life. So they're starting to affect your daily life. They start to affect how you function at work, in your social life. They start almost impacting your productivity, right? And that goes now for a longer period of time, about minimum of 2 weeks to about 2 months or even longer, right? So that's major depressive disorder. Then you have persistent depressive disorder, what we used to call dysthymia. Now, these depressive symptoms, after a month or two, they don't stop. They continue up to about 2 years, that you're feeling depressed almost every single day, most of the day, for a period of 2 years. And then there is a different one that is unique for women, what we call the premenstrual depressive disorder, right? So it's different from PMS, what people call PMS. PMS is a transitionary like symptoms during your menses. But now these depressive symptoms are so debilitating that they affect your functioning days before your menstrual cycle, during the menstrual cycle, and at the end of the menstrual cycle, as opposed to PMS, which is just during the menses, but this is before, during, and after. All right. And in women also, the depressive disorders can come during pregnancy and postpartum. So after the woman has delivered, what most people know as postpartum depression or postnatal depression, right? And then we have bipolar depression, which now you have the depressive symptoms, but they are part of the bipolar mood disorder, all right? And there's some depression that is actually brought on by medical illnesses, like cancer, for instance, HIV, and depression that's also brought on by substances, all right? And when we talk about substances, we mean mainly illicit substances, so your alcohol, cannabis, ecstasy, your stimulants, codeine, opioids, morphine. So those can be brought on. So those are the main types of depression. I think for the purpose of our talk, I'll just stop there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I think
there's a lot. Yeah.
When let me not say if, when we do get a sponsor for this show, we should be able to do this on a regular, because I believe that kind of like how motivation works. Like, you know, when somebody's feeling down and they watch a motivational video, now you're feeling amped, but then the next day something happens that takes you back to what your mind is used to experiencing. You know, I think there are various things that we can expand on, but for this conversation I just want to talk about, actually it's so important that you mentioned substance abuse, because I know that a lot of people, maybe let me not assume, but a lot of people are smoking weed now. You know, I'm a weed smoker, and I used to smoke a lot more than I do now. But I just want to know from you, how does a substance like this, maybe this question is for the other talk. Let's park it for another talk.
No, you can ask. It's fine.
No, it's cool, but I want to get into the other stuff first. You know, let's get into therapy and how we can help ourselves. I want to bring in BRIGHTSOUL. Oh, before I bring in BRIGHTSOUL, I want to ask you: is there ways that people can self diagnose? You know, if you're feeling like, okay, I'm starting to see different actions, different behaviors because I'm depressed. Is there ways that we can help ourselves on our own before we consult a doctor, before we consult a psychiatrist?
All right. So look, it's, you know, the self-diagnosis is a double-edged sword, right? Most people know themselves better than another person. So sometimes people see the changes, all right? But because we are human beings, we always want to self-correct first, isn't it? All right. But sometimes when we try self-correct, we might actually be worsening things. All right. So let's take the substances for instance. Let's take alcohol for instance. All right. We use it recreationally, right, to uplift our mood. All right. When you are feeling depressed, yes, what it will do initially is to improve your mood. But as it withdraws from your system, you know, so not just the physical symptoms of the terrible babalas, right, the headaches and the nausea and everything, but now what it actually does, it changes the brain chemistry and makes the depression worse and makes anxiety worse, right? Some people will try self-correct when they're depressed by, okay, let me sleep more. But not knowing that when you're sleeping more, you're actually isolating yourself more. So we do certain things sort of to self-correct, but sometimes we're actually making it worse. But then there are like guidelines to these things where they say, okay, first is to notice and accept that you have an issue or there's a challenge and it's difficult for you to manage by yourself, right? So people will say, like, especially now with the lockdown, have a routine, right? Have a structure in your life, what you do. You know, you wake up and you do maybe one thing that is productive. You know, exercise. It's been difficult to exercise. Maybe now with level 4, now that people have like 3 hours in the morning to get up and maybe take a walk and exercise, that you can do that, or you can exercise at home. Try eating healthy, right? Talking to somebody. It doesn't always have to be a professional, but talking to somebody already is therapeutic. It's almost like you are that burden, you're offloading it. So it's by talking to somebody. Some people pray, some people meditate, right? So those are some of the things that you can do. There's some people that read, right? So it depends also when you read and what time you read. Because sometimes people read when they're in bed, when they're supposed to be sleeping. But although the reading is a good thing, but it's the time that you're doing it. But now if you're doing it in bed, you have lights on and you're telling the brain you need to stay awake. So the purpose of why you're reading now becomes actually unproductive for you, because you're telling the brain, I need to concentrate, and the brain doesn't switch off, then you don't sleep. And actually not sleeping then makes the depression worse or the anxiety worse. So it's like little things like that we can sort of nitpick. And when people say like healthy eating, there are different types of diets. You know, there are people that have high carb diets or high fat or banting diets, but they don't work for everyone. A banting diet might work for a male patient, for instance, but for a female patient, when they try a bant, it actually makes the depression worse, because most of the bant diets, like the high fats, and actually that withdrawal from sugar and carbohydrates, which is linked a lot to the female hormones, like your estrogen and progesterone, it actually makes the depression dip. So it's like, that's why sometimes consulting sometimes will help to say you are doing the right things, or the general umbrella is that you're doing the right things, but you could be doing them in a better way. So those few things like that, yeah.
I hear you, I will be testament to that as well, because in 2018 I was involved in a car accident, and my back was hurt. I injured my back, and I couldn't produce like I used to produce anymore. I couldn't sit like I used to sit anymore. I had to get a special chair, the chair that I sit on now, but the effects of it mentally really took me to in a bad space. But I see now I've been getting into a routine. I've been getting into watching certain videos online, to get myself daily some kind of self-help, and I think that's important. But I want to speak to Bright Soul and get him in regarding, bro, like you shared a story with me where you were in a you were on the highway, you were driving, and you were on a conversation with someone, and you got so mad, you got so angry that you stopped in the middle of the road, and you did not even see and even notice that you were in the middle of the road. And this is kind of the event that now led you to go and seek for help. Tell me about the process of getting into a mental institution and how urgent that they said it was for you to be there.
I think the incident happened when I was driving from Eastern Cape. I don't know, most guys wouldn't know, approaching Margate. So I had a call from a friend, then we spoke over the phone. But those light moments when someone jokes about something. But what was weird about the joke, on a normal day, I would take a joke and laugh about it. But on the day, I totally lost it. I got upset. I started screaming, because what I normally do when I'm driving, I always have my phone on Bluetooth speakers, so I don't get distracted when I'm driving. So, but on that conversation, I got so upset, I started screaming in such that I started moving my hands off the steering wheel. Then out of nowhere, I hit the brakes and stopped. Because I'm literally shaking, I'm screaming and shouting. And then the person on the side is trying to explain that I was just joking. So it's I don't understand why you're getting upset. As much as I heard that part, I continued screaming and shouting. And the only thing that gave me an alert was people started hooting, only to realize I'm in the middle of the road. It's a highway. And I just stopped right there because I don't know what happened then. I think I then calmed down and then continued driving to a next safe spot. And then where I worked, we had something called iCare, where there's a certain department that deals with employees' problems and whatever. Not, it's almost like a certain department that takes care of things that would make you be productive. If you're not, it's a certain outlet where you need to speak to people. So I made a call, and then on the other side of the call, there was a therapist. So we spoke for a good hour, and then after the conversation, I got booked in for, I can't remember what the guy's profession was. I think he's a social worker. So they set up the meetings with him within a week. Then I started seeing a social worker. I think that was October 2018. And then I think those sessions went on for a month. And then I think the fourth session that we had, the guy said, look, there's not much of changes going on between our meetings. I feel at some point I need to refer you to someone better who's got better knowledge than me. And then that's when the guy referred me to a psychiatrist. But my first appointment with the psychiatrist was only the following year in January. But I think it only took me 2 sessions with the psychiatrist. And on the 3rd session, she decided to book me in because she said I got severe depression. I also has post-traumatic stress disorder. So I got booked into a hospital where I stayed for 2 weeks. That was in 2019 February. While I was in hospital, and that's when I started medication as well, because obviously my psychiatrist felt my depression was too severe, and obviously she recommended a medical route on the whole thing of trying to help me. So yeah, but prior to that, from the incident where I was on the phone, I would have a very weird edge when I'll be driving. Like I said before, I'll see a truck or I'll see a cliff while I'm driving. I'll start imagining myself driving over a cliff. I'll start imagining myself crashing into a truck. So those were incidents or imagination playing on my head until the day when I had an argument with someone over the phone, which changed everything, where I felt I needed help. I think it was more over of what the doctor had just mentioned, where you feel changes in your system, but somehow you feel, no, I'm stronger than what I'm going through. I can help myself and whatever the nonsense that we decide to think sometime. So, hence the doctor highlighted that you might think you can help yourself, but somehow maybe a professional help would be a better option. So I don't know about self-diagnosing. It's not really, I'll say from my experience, it's not 100% foolproof.
Yeah, man. I think also probably then I think it means that depending on the level and the severity of your effect,
speak quickly.
depending on the level and severity of your depression, I think you will know, we should anyway, sometimes we don't, but we should know that now I really need help, but I think for me, the way I look at, I've been in the past looking at mental health as like thinking it's for sick people, and now I'm starting to get my view on it is that you don't need to be extremely sick to actually get help, to go and get therapy. And you could, my one of my goals in life is to actually work hard and to be able to afford, for me and my family, to be able to afford regular consultations with doctors, just for mental health. Because I think as people, sometimes people, like we talk about eating well, we talk about exercising and investing time and effort in those parts of our lives, but we hardly talk about investing into our mental health, and I wanna bring in the doctor. I saw she was busy. Are you there, doctor?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to bring you in with regards to therapy. Is therapy as accessible as it should be?
Look, in South Africa, it's not. It's not as accessible, but then there's been like a lot of movement to make it as accessible as possible. All right. And if you think about like your institutions or organizations like SADC, South African Depression and Anxiety Group, all right, they've made hotlines for suicide, for depression, they've made them free. And we have a lot of corporate now that's coming on board to sort of sponsor, access to therapy. And in state as well, maybe people are not aware. Maybe I will speak for maybe the people that are here in Johannesburg, is that our clinics have mental health like departments, or they will be able to refer you to a public hospital that does have. So it's not all clinics, it's the major big clinics like your community health care centers, they will have mental health. So there's usually a nurse and there's a doctor that rotates there. Unfortunately, like in Pretoria and Vereeniging, some areas don't have, but always find if there is, you don't have private or medical aid, that is perhaps the route to go. And I know most people just think therapy is for sick people, you know, and that's why we need to change a lot of mindsets. And I think that's the reason I appreciate platforms like this, where we can educate people that we shouldn't wait for things to go wrong. All right. If you think about it, what we're doing for physical health, like for preventing people getting heart attacks and strokes, we've now advocated for, please use low salt in your diet, cut down sugar, exercise, keep a healthy lifestyle. All of that is prevention, all right, to prevent an adverse event. So usually when people present and now come to the hospital or now go see a psychiatrist, it's often when things have gone completely wrong now, where we're like at the end of, or the extreme symptoms of the depression and anxiety, where you're feeling suicidal. And that's when people come. And I saw a post, but it was actually like a meme that I think it was Jada Pinkett or somebody had posted like a meme that, look, we should be going to therapy to correct, first of all, to be more self-aware, you know, to know ourselves a little bit better, and also try to change almost the certain things in our families, like a generational curse, to break the generational curse. Sometimes our parents did the best that they could under the circumstances, but them trying to do whatever they were trying to do, what was best for us, actually hurt us. So we should be going to therapy to almost forgive them for those unspoken things, self-correct, be more self-aware, and change it for the next generation so that they don't struggle with certain things that we are struggling with. You know, so therapy is not only for sick people. Yes, primarily it's there for that, but if we could do a lot of prevention, that would be great. You know, and it's to get coping skills on how we can do things a little bit better. And if you think about it, athletes, you know, get therapy. You know, before a match, you get a therapist that comes to the changing rooms or the locker rooms to motivate you, to say, guys, we can do it. You know, after a win, we say, what did we do right? That is therapy on its own. Okay, what didn't we do well? You know, yes, we had a loss, but what can we learn from that loss? You know, therapy is about that. It's not only when things have gone wrong, but sometimes when also things are going right. If you're like a business person, for instance, what is going right in your business and how can we keep it going? You know, and that's where the life coaches, mainly the life coaches, are getting in, motivating you how to stay on the right track. You know, so therapy is not only for the extreme end, but it's also for to prevent things. We are doing therapy right now. I mean, if you think about it, with coronavirus, putting that mask on, you're preventing getting COVID-19. That is therapy. You're doing something to prevent. But also by getting more knowledge, knowing more and more about it, you're more self-aware, so that when you start getting that cough, or you start feeling chest pains, then you know, maybe I should self-isolate. Maybe I should do that. Therapy should also be like that.
And I do concur, because there's also a thing that I'm just thinking about now, where if we know the things that we might encounter that might take our mental state down, or put us in a depressive mental state. If we know those things, even when we're not depressed, if we know about them, we'll be able to deal with those things if it happens that an event makes us causes us to be depressed, you know. But I wanted to ask you about us musicians, especially musicians. I'll talk about myself. Last year, I had a great beginning of the year. You know, I was gigging a lot, and towards the end of the year, let me say the third quarter of the year, I got sick. You know, I was spending literally 10 hours in the bathroom because of my sickness, something like that, and mentally it really, really affected me a lot. And I, like I say, I've been trying to find ways of helping myself, just shifting my mental state. But I want to talk about me. One of the things that depressed me in while I was sick was seeing the success of other people. We are on social media, and you see other DJs gigging. You see somebody's gig guide like is busy every weekend. This person is busy, and you yourself know that you are good, and you believe that you are good. You probably deserve to be as much as busy, if anything. What are some of the things that we are seeing on social media? How can we deal better with this kind of depression, where we see successes and we feel ourselves that we are not yet in that path?
In that path. All right. I think, for the creative industry, that is the bulk of who you are. It's almost like your identity to be creative. And as opposed maybe to maybe the general population, where you're not in the creative industry, when your mood changes and the sleep changes, maybe you can, I don't know, you can try self-correct and say, I'll do that. But in the entertainment industry, it's almost like that zest for life, that drive for life. It's almost like you have a car, it's in a parking lot, you know how to drive it, but it's just not moving out. I think that initial jerk is what is the most frustrating, and probably in the music industry is the most debilitating. Because I have the equipment, I have the tools, but why is it just not going in the direction that I want? And often what I will tell my patients that are in the creative industry is that, look, the depression is eating away at the beautiful parts of your brain. And that's what depression is. It's going to almost milk out that creativity, that motivation. That creativity sort of goes down, and you feel like you're almost on a plateau first, and then you have that slope where you go down, and you feel like the hole, you're sinking in deeper and deeper. So what I always tell them, take a moment to do something different from what you're usually used to. So try something completely different from being creative. So do something, even if it's, you're a person that likes music. Try something completely different that is creative. Maybe painting, or craft, or some DIY. That it's still, it's almost like we're trying to make your brain remember that although this neuron is not working, that is creative, that creates the beats, that creates the music, you still have other neurons that know how to create. So it's almost like you like in a car, you jumpstart the other neurons so that they can start lighting up, and it lights back into who you are, which is the creative part, creative part of you. And often what happens is that because you see this car, it can move, but it's in the parking lot, and it has the petrol, the engine is working, why is it not moving? You start comparing it. It's like, but it's my AMG. That person has a Polo, but their Polo is moving around, getting gigs everywhere. Then you start comparing, but then you forget that actually this car is still beautiful. It still has all of these things. It just has forgotten how to move. But all the beautiful parts of it and the creative parts of it are still there. So then you start focusing, and we don't know what the brain does that in the human psyche, is that it almost like puts the volume up on all the negative things, and all the positive things it keeps minimizing, and they become smaller and smaller and smaller. And sometimes that's why talking to somebody, it's almost they're reminding you, they keep reminding you, but no, this car, yes, it's not moving, but it's still a car. It still has a beautiful engine. It can still move. It still has petrol. It's almost to remind you that all the positive things are there. Although you're not feeling them, you're probably not experiencing them because of this one part. And often when one part is not working, which is the creative part, it's like you put a blanket that everything else is negative. You start being pessimistic. So sometimes, like, trying to do something different, something new, it's almost that you are you are helping the brain and say, well, I did something productive today. I got out of bed. Yesterday, I didn't feel like getting out of bed, but today I got out of bed. So it's one positive thing. So and the brain likes that. It's like, okay, I've been sleeping for 5 days, but today I managed to get out of bed. The brain likes that. It's like, oh, you did something nice for yourself. Then you took a shower. It's like, oh, you did 2 nice things. And then you start building up on it. And it's like, okay, so I managed to wake up today. I managed to brush my teeth. I managed to have a good breakfast. Because sometimes you start eating junk, or you just eat one slice of bread or toast, but then suddenly you're eating one healthy thing. It's like, oh, I had an apple a day, kept the doctor away, then you do something. And then the brain likes that. It's like you're building one thing that you're doing very well. And the brain remembers, oh, okay, so this car actually can move. I just need to get into it, and start making a beat. And then there'll be that one beat or that one song or that one text, or that just almost like reminds you that you actually can do it. You have the capability. It's that some parts of your brain started switching off that creativity and concentrate on the negative, and we're just putting back the light on, putting the light back on, and suddenly, hey, everything is coming back to you. All right. So some people, and I think sometimes we're not patient with ourselves, and we're not kind to ourselves. So we want it to be quick. We want a quick fix. You're like, but I know I can do it. Why is it not happening as fast as I should? But that worry and that anxiety that it's not happening as fast as it should, you're actually telling the brain stop. Because you're putting too much expectations on me. Here I was trying to pedal on, and you're saying, I stop, and then it just stops, right? So that's why sometimes having somebody in your corner, and they say, you can do it. They're fueling back into this carb that it's starting to sort of, where you're feeling like you're drowning, and somebody just like reaching out and giving you a hand and say, you can't do it. You are capable.
Yeah. I love this because yesterday I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and when I was in that depressive state of mind last year, and he's one of the people that kind of sparked light into what I was going through, and the way he did it, he was like, no man, at least have a vision, know you're going here, know where to start, put in the small steps. And yesterday, for the past couple of weeks when I've been speaking to him, he's not going through a good time. He's having a bit of difficulty with certain things, areas of his life. And I came now as the person. I reminded him, you said this to me. It's now my turn, firstly, to assist you, but it's now your turn to take your own advice, because I think it's very important for Majita and ladies, for friends, to be able to talk about things that are difficult to us, that are heavy on us mentally. And I want to bring in Bright Soul, because we've spoken about this, bro. Why is it so difficult? And I'm not being sexist, but I'm saying this because we spoke about it in a Majita type of way. Why is it so difficult for guys, especially Bright Soul, to speak about depression and about things that they encounter in life?
I think it's how the society have carved the way we think. Basically, what it means is we have this mentality. I'll say, not having to sound tribal, but the most common statement that Amazulu usually makes is indodaikali. So loosely translated to a man doesn't cry. But what's the point of you not crying, whereas you can feel it, I'm breaking down? What's the point of having you as my friend if I cannot feel vulnerable around you and say, as in Sir LSG, and I don't know what are your thoughts? How can I get out of this space? Because the problem with us is not you as an individual. It's what the society has created. There's that plaque that's eating on our minds and how we broaden ourselves. It's a very sad state, especially with men. We don't want to share. I could be going through a rough patch, but I'll feel like I know, say LSG is gonna judge me if I speak to him about this and that. Also, there's that whole vibe between men and a lack of brotherhood and there's so much, but also is it I think what the doctor mentioned is there's that generational curse that has been part of our lives. I think it's time we need to break that. I think it's time that we need to have such conversation on more on a regular, not only on especially people spend a lot of time on social media. Why don't we drop the anchor where we need to park the boats that is full of men that can speak, a boat that's full of men that can open up and say, as in, this is what I'm going through, Majida, what are you thinking? But also, like you mentioned, there's been a growth in terms of openness and how we talk about such things. But I think we need to do more. And I think we need to do away with this macho idea of saying, no, I'm a man, so I don't need to break down. I'll say, for instance, my partner knows when I'm not feeling good. I'll say, you know what, babe, I'm not feeling okay, A, B, and C. We start sharing those things. But with women, they have groups. They have your WhatsApp groups. You have your Facebook groups, which was strictly females. They talk about relationship, marriages, their health, careers, and what's not. Why are we not doing that? I can't even count to 5 the amount of groups that I can join as a guy and then get up and get something substantial out of it. I think it also starts with us. If I'm not a friend, then you are at least a friend to someone that needs help, because at least I know between us, whoever is listening, we know someone who has taken their lives, someone that's committed suicide. We've known someone that attempted to take their life. It's not rocket science to start, because the problem is the society, maybe we as African will start saying, no, Bright is cursed. That's why he wanted to take his life. Ulesejo is cursed. That's why he no longer wants to produce music. But that's not the case. The case is we need to shout for help. Also, we need to make it easier, even for our families, to get involved with helping us. The moment you feel weak, speak out and say, no, you know what, I'm feeling weak. Allow people to help you. And let's do it in a way where a person that's not going through good things shouldn't feel intimidated to say, as in, I'm not okay. It's okay not to be okay, but at the same time, it's not okay to not be okay and stay there and not look for help. I think that sums up more of what I think.
Right, I love that so much. And I don't know, Doctor, if you want to add anything on that before I ask you the last question.
No, I definitely agree with Brighton. And I mean, if you go through most of my social media posts, it's all about it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to ask for help. There's so much strength in accepting that you're not your usual self, and people can see it. And sometimes because people are so afraid of mental illness, you know what they do is that they tiptoe around you and walk away and almost leave you to not be okay. You know, it's almost like they want to see you first suicidal or attempting or hurting somebody or having like a road rage incident or punching a wall for them to, it's almost like they need something physical to be able to say, okay, you're not okay. Or, you know, they want the extreme ends of mental illness where you're walking on the street naked and all of that. And it shouldn't be about that. And all these minor changes that build up to that end, you know. So I totally agree with Bright Soul, is that we need to start changing the conversations that we are having. You know, talking about not being okay should be as okay as like, man, I hurt my ankle, I can't go to gym anymore. It should be as much as jovial and as lighthearted as that.
So my last question to you, Doctor, is I mean, I hope that we'll talk after the stream, but I hope that we can find a way to continue having this conversation at least on a monthly basis. Obviously, I know you're a busy woman and you're a busy business lady, but I want to ask you, if you had the power to influence anything in our society with regards to depression and mental illness, what would you change?
I think, you know what, and it's my wish, perhaps in this generation of psychiatrists that we are, is that to make mental health a priority, like we did with HIV, like we did with TB. I mean, our first case of HIV was in the 80s. I mean, it's like 30, 40 years later, we're still fighting that stigma. But I think it's because at some point they said, we're going to make it as normal as any other illness. So if we can get mental illness to be a priority, to be made a priority, like we're doing right now with COVID-19, if it was given the same amount of attention like it is right now, I think then we'll go a long way. We'll go a long way. People will walk into a psychiatrist's office or a psychologist's office as if like you had a cold and you were going to a GP. So that's my wish. And it will be easy to have these conversations. And we don't have these conversations in silos, We're having them out there and everybody is aware.
Yeah. BRIGHTSOUL, let me ask you as well a similar question, bro. If you had the power to influence anything with regards to our music scene, especially from a mental point of view, what would you influence? Oh, sorry, bro. I muted your mic. Sorry. I think you need to start that again.
Yeah. No, I think it would be a matter of making it as normal as possible to talk about it. I must mention there's a group called Don't Do It. It's mostly it was created by a guy in Soweto called Veja La Vita. He's a producer. I'm sure maybe you know him.
Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
And this group, the reason it says don't do it, it's a matter of encouraging people that whatever you're going through, don't think about taking your life. So what that group does, there's not much of a dialogue. Maybe they might be going forward, but it allows DJs and creatives to create mixes or songs based on encouraging the guys in the industry not to do anything silly when they're going through depression and whatever not. Yeah. So I think there is almost close to 50 mixes on the group, or a bit of songs as well there where people are doing things to encourage the next person, because I might not know what you're going through, but if I put up a mix or you put up a song saying don't do it, it might trigger something to you and say, you know what, I have a lot to live for, so I don't need to take my life to do it. So my thing would be, the contribution is, let's open up, let's speak more, let it be not a taboo to talk about mental illness. I think that's my stance.
Sure, bro. Just in closing, Doctor, so I heard that from two people that back in high school, right, you were the most competitive person ever. Apparently, is that still the case? Are you still that active person?
Oh man, not as active as I should be, but I'd still like to think that I got it. I still got it.
Anyway, let me let you go. Thank you so much for doing this. Now we'll catch up on the other side, Doctor.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Bye.
BRIGHTSOUL, bro, I wanna ask you, do you have anything against people who play digital?
No, you're trying to throw me under the bus. No, I don't. Frankly, what people don't understand, I'm pro analog. So I'm not anti-digital.
Okay.
I'm pro-analog. So there's a difference. I put what I love and what I go for, and obviously someone will take offense if they don't understand where I stand. So
Yeah.
I'm pro-analog. I'm
Okay.
not anti-digital.
I love that. I love that, bro. Thank you so much for doing this as well, ne? I really appreciate it, bro. So yeah,
No, thank you so much.
yeah, to everyone who's watching, guys, you know, it's amazing how it can take one moment to change somebody from committing suicide, somebody from pulling the trigger, like a spark of light, somebody, a conversation, you know, a message. So let's help one another. Let's speak with one another. Check on your strong friends. Check on everyone that you love. You know, you'll be surprised at the kind of information that you'll get from that. So many people, I believe that many people would have never committed suicide had they found something. You know, a small thing could change somebody's life, and yeah, that's what we need to do. Anyway, I saw a couple of your questions. I'm sorry I never got to them. We'll set up. I'm gonna try by my level best to speak to the doctor. Hopefully, we can have another session where we can have questions and people sharing stories as well. But yeah, I just wanted to say, guys, thank you so much for watching these. Let's stay creative. Let's do what we love. You know, let's stay uplifted as well. Peace out.